The ancient cobblestones of the winding drive felt like a forgotten song beneath the tires of the hired car, each bump a rhythm of departure from the world Alara knew. Dusk was settling, a soft lavender and rose watercolor across the sky as they ascended the final steep incline. Below, the Aegean glimmered, a vast, inky canvas flecked with the last vestiges of the sun's fire. She'd chosen this place on a whim, a desperate reach for something untamed after months of feeling utterly lost. Villa Delphinus, her agent had called it, remote and characterful. A euphemism, Alara suspected, for beautifully decaying. The car finally crunched to a halt before a pair of immense, weathered wooden gates. Vines, heavy with the scent of jasmine, clung to their ornate ironwork, half obscuring a faded coat of arms. The driver, a taciturn man named Nikos, grunted, killed the engine, and then, with a key so old it seemed carved from the very gates themselves, unlocked them. A low creak, a sigh of protest, and they swung inward, revealing a tunnel of cypress trees, their dark silhouettes reaching for the deepening sky. The villa itself emerged slowly from the shadows, a grand dome of stone and terracotta, built into the very cliffside. Its many windows, dark and reflective, were like eyes watching her approach. It wasn't perfect. A shutter hung askew, a patch of plaster was missing, revealing the ancient brick beneath, but it possessed an undeniable, magnetic beauty. It felt alive, brimming with stories whispered by the salt-laden breeze that now swept past her, carrying the scent of wild herbs and the distant murmur of the sea. As Nikos wrestled her luggage from the boot, a figure detached itself from the deeper shadows of the villa's entrance. He moved with a quiet economy, a fluidity that suggested a long acquaintance with the landscape. Tall, with a lean, powerful build, he was dressed in dark, simple clothing that seemed to absorb the twilight around him. His hair, the color of rich earth, fell loosely across his brow, and as he stepped into the faint glow of the porch lamp, Alara saw the startling clarity of his eyes. They were the color of deep sea, shadowed and intense, surveying her with an unnerving stillness. "You must be Alara." His voice was a low rumble, carrying a slight, intriguing accent she couldn't immediately place. It held a rough-hewn quality, like worn stone, yet was undeniably melodic. "I am Reese, the owner of the villa, and your host." Host. Not caretaker, not agent. Owner. The information settled over her, warm and unexpected. She'd assumed the villa was simply rented out, an empty vessel waiting for a temporary occupant. The reality, the sudden, undeniable presence of him, shifted something within her. "Reese," she echoed, her own voice feeling thin and reedy in comparison. "It's beautiful." Her gaze swept over the villa's facade, then back to him, lingering on the subtle curve of his mouth. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a fleeting glimpse of something warmer beneath his reserved exterior. "It has seen many seasons," he said, his eyes now holding hers, a quiet challenge in their depth. "Come, let me show you inside." He didn't wait for her reply, simply turned and led the way, his stride long and unhurried. Nikos, looking suddenly eager to depart, hastily deposited her bags and quickly reversed down the drive, leaving Alara alone with Reese and the overwhelming presence of Villa Delphinus. The interior was a revelation. High ceilings, stone floors cool beneath her sandals, and an air of elegant neglect. Moonlight, now pouring through tall archways, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, lost stars. The walls were adorned with faded frescoes of mythical creatures and ancient landscapes, their colors muted by time but still vibrant with a sense of wonder. Reese moved through the rooms with an intimate familiarity, his shadow lengthening and shrinking as they passed through pools of light. "This is the main salon," he gestured to a vast room dominated by a grand fireplace and heavy, carved furniture draped in white linen dust covers. "The kitchen," he continued, leading her into a surprisingly modern space, stark white against the ancient stone, yet somehow fitting. "And upstairs, your rooms." He led her up a sweeping marble staircase, its banister cool and smooth beneath her fingertips. The air grew heavier here, scented with old wood and dried herbs. Her suite was at the far end of a long corridor, overlooking the sea. "This will be yours," he said, opening a heavy wooden door. The room was expansive, bathed in moonlight. A four-poster bed, draped in sheer white linen, stood proudly in the center. The windows, wide and tall, offered an uninterrupted panorama of the dark, restless sea. The waves crashed against the cliffs below, a constant, hypnotic rhythm. "It's incredible," she breathed, walking towards the open balcony, the cool night air caressing her skin. The scent of jasmine was stronger here, mingling with the salt. She leaned against the ancient stone railing, feeling the vastness of the sea stretching out before her. Reese stood in the doorway, watching her. She could feel his gaze, warm and steady, on her back. "The sea has a way of putting things into perspective," he murmured, his voice closer now. He had followed her. She turned, her eyes meeting his in the dim light. His proximity, the quiet intensity of his presence, was suddenly palpable. She found herself acutely aware of the space between them, the soft hum of the night, the beating of her own heart. He was taller than she'd initially registered, his shoulders broad beneath the simple fabric of his shirt. A faint scent, earthy and masculine, reached her, a hint of something primal and deeply alluring. "I hope so," she said, her voice softer than she'd intended. "I've been looking for perspective." He nodded, a slow, understanding gesture. "The villa has a way of revealing what you need to see." His gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there for a fraction of a second, then lifted back to her eyes, leaving a faint electric current in its wake. "I've prepared some supper, if you're hungry." The thought of food had been far from her mind, but now, the suggestion of shared sustenance in this quiet ancient place felt profoundly intimate. "That would be wonderful, thank you." He led her back downstairs, not to the modern kitchen but to a smaller, more intimate dining room she hadn't noticed before. A single candle flickered on the heavy wooden table, casting dancing shadows on the frescoed walls. The aroma of roasted vegetables and fresh fish filled the air, rich and inviting. He pulled out a chair for her, his hand brushing lightly against her arm as she sat. The contact was brief, fleeting, yet it sent a shiver through her, a spark of awareness that was both thrilling and unsettling. She watched him move around the room, lighting another candle, pouring water into 2 ornate crystal goblets. His movements were fluid, graceful, almost feline. The meal was simple but exquisite. Freshly grilled sea bass, lemon-infused olive oil, a salad of local greens and ripe tomatoes. They ate mostly in silence, punctuated by the soft clinking of cutlery and the distant roar of the waves. Yet, it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was charged, heavy with unspoken questions and burgeoning curiosity. Ilara found herself stealing glances at him across the flickering candlelight. His profile was strong, almost sculptural, his jawline sharp, his nose aquiline. The shadows played across his face, highlighting the subtle planes and angles. When he met her gaze, his eyes held a depth that seemed to hold centuries within them. A quiet wisdom. And something else she couldn't quite decipher. A hint of melancholy, perhaps, or a fierce, contained passion. "You're an artist, aren't you?" he asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. His voice, in the intimacy of the room, was a soft caress. She was startled, not only by the directness of the question, but by the fact that he knew. "How did you know?" A faint smile, that same elusive, almost there curve, touched his lips. "The way you looked at the frescoes, at the light, the way you carry yourself, you see the world differently." He paused, taking a slow sip of his water. "What is your medium?" "Painting," she replied, feeling a blush creep up her neck. It had been so long since she'd truly felt like an artist, since the colors had come alive for her. "Mainly oils. I used to paint landscapes, portraits." Her voice trailed off. "Used to?" he prompted gently, his gaze unwavering. She hesitated, then found herself confiding, something she rarely did with strangers. I lost someone. And then, the colors just faded. I came here hoping to find them again, to find something. His eyes softened, a profound understanding passing between them. He didn't offer empty platitudes, didn't try to fill the silence with facile words. He simply listened, his presence a comforting anchor. The island holds many colors, he said finally, his voice a low promise. And many whispers. The word whispers hung in the air, a delicate, intriguing echo of the story she hoped to find here. After supper, he led her back to the main salon. He swept the dust covers from a plush velvet sofa, revealing rich, faded jewel tones. Would you like some brandy, or tea? Brandy would be lovely, she said, sinking onto the sofa, its softness a welcome relief after the long journey. She watched him cross the vast room to a hidden cabinet, his movements fluid and unhurried. He poured 2 measures into delicate crystal glasses, the amber liquid catching the candlelight. He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing again, a brief, electrifying touch that lingered. The brandy was warm, smooth, and potent, spreading a pleasant heat through her veins. They sat for a while, sipping their drinks, the silence now comfortable, companionable. Ilara felt herself relaxing for the first time in months. The tension that had been a constant companion in her shoulders, in the tightness of her jaw, slowly began to unravel. She found herself studying him, the way the firelight caught the planes of his face, the slight furrow in his brow when he was lost in thought, the controlled strength in his hands as he held his glass. Tell me about the villa, she finally ventured, curious about the history etched into every stone. He leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. It was built by my ancestors. Sailors, merchants, artists, many stories are woven into these walls. It has seen joy, sorrow, passion. His voice grew softer, almost a whisper. And always, the sea. He spoke of generations, of storms weathered and celebrations held, of loves found and lost within these very rooms. His words painted vivid pictures in her mind, imbuing the ancient stones with a vibrant, living history. She was captivated, not just by the stories, but by the way he told them, his voice rich with affection and a touch of melancholy. As the hour grew late, the moon climbed higher, casting a silvery sheen through the tall windows. The air was warm, scented with night-blooming jasmine and the ever-present salt. Ilara felt a strange sense of belonging, a connection to this place, and to the man sitting beside her, that was both profound and utterly unexpected. It's been a long day, she said eventually, regret lacing her words. The thought of leaving his company, of the vast, silent room upstairs, felt suddenly isolating. He nodded, rising with an easy grace. Indeed. Sleep will be welcome. He walked her to the foot of the grand staircase, and for a moment, they stood facing each other. The air between them thrummed with an unspoken energy, a potent awareness. Thank you, Race, she said, her gaze fixed on his eyes, those deep, ancient sea eyes. For everything. He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment, then gently cupped her cheek. His skin was warm, slightly rough, and the touch sent a jolt through her, a rush of heat and longing that caught her by surprise. His thumb stroked softly along her jawline, a feather-like caress that lingered, sending shivers down her spine. The pleasure is mine, Ilara, he murmured, his voice a low, husky whisper that seemed to curl around her heart. His eyes searched hers, a question, a promise, a silent invitation in their depths. She felt a magnetic pull, an almost irresistible urge to lean into his touch, to close the small distance between them. For a long, breathless moment, they stood there, suspended in time, the world outside fading to a blur. The soft rush of the waves, the distant chirping of crickets, the beating of her own heart. These were the only sounds. She could feel the warmth of his fingers on her skin, the subtle scent of him, the raw, undeniable power of his presence. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of ages, he slowly withdrew his hand. The sudden absence of his touch left her feeling cold, yearning for its return. Good night, Ilara, he said, his voice now a little more distant, a little more composed, but his eyes still held that potent, lingering intensity. "Good night, Reese," she managed, her voice a fragile whisper. She turned and slowly ascended the marble staircase, acutely aware of his gaze following her. She didn't look back, afraid of what she might see, or what she might do. Each step felt heavy, burdened with the weight of unspoken desire. Once in her room, the vastness of the space felt less daunting, more comforting. She walked to the balcony, leaning out into the cool night, letting the salt spray kiss her face. The moon was a luminous pearl in the velvet sky, casting a silver path across the restless sea. She thought of Reese, of the quiet strength in his hands, the depth in his eyes, the almost painful tenderness of his touch. She had come to Villa Delphinus seeking inspiration, seeking to mend a broken part of herself. She hadn't expected to find a man who stirred her soul with such an immediate, profound intensity. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the sea wash over her. His whisper, "The island holds many colors, and many whispers," echoed in her mind. And she knew, with a certainty that hummed in her veins, that the whispers of Villa Delphinus had only just begun. And they were already speaking her name, his name, weaving a story she was only just beginning to dream. The whispers of Villa Delphinus had only just begun. And they were already speaking her name, his name, weaving a story she was only just beginning to dream. Ilara stood on the terrace, the sea breeze a cool caress against her flushed skin, the last tendrils of twilight painting the sky in hues of bruised violet and rose. His presence, though he had departed silently moments ago, still hummed in the air around her, a resonant chord struck deep within her soul. The suddenness of it, the profound unbidden connection, left her breathless, a dizzying mix of exhilaration and trepidation swirling in her chest. She had come to the island seeking solace, a quiet balm for a spirit frayed by loss and disillusionment. Certainly not the electrifying jolt of a man who seemed to see not just Jintaig her, but Ethri her, to the very core of her being. The island holds many colors, and many whispers. His voice, a low rumble against the roar of the waves, echoed in her memory. He had looked at her as if she were a secret he was aching to uncover. And in turn, she felt an unsettling, exhilarating urge to surrender to his exploration. His eyes, the color of the deep Aegean, had held an ancient wisdom, a knowing warmth that promised both comfort and challenge. She pressed her palms against the cool stone balustrade, grounding herself against the sudden lightness in her head. The moon, a sliver of silver, began its slow ascent, casting a shimmering path across the water. The air was thick, with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the ever-present salt tang of the sea. Every sense felt heightened, alive in a way it hadn't been for years. It was as if Villa Delphinus, with its crumbling elegance and its hidden gardens, was a living entity, conspiring with this enigmatic man, to awaken something long dormant within her. A shiver, not of cold but of pure sensation, traced its way down her spine. It was too much too soon, yet utterly undeniable. She needed to retreat, to process the seismic shift that had just occurred. With a lingering look at the moon-kissed sea, she turned and made her way back inside, the echoes of his gaze still burning on her skin. The villa's interior was a labyrinth of shadows and soft lamplight. Each step on the cool marble floor seemed to amplify the beating of her own heart. The air, though still, seemed to thrum with a silent energy, as if the very stones of the house held stories, ancient and new, waiting to be told. She passed an alcove where a faded fresco depicted a scene of nymphs dancing by the sea, their forms fluid and free. A pang of longing, sharp and unexpected, pierced her. To feel so free, so unburdened, so utterly alive. Reaching her room, she closed the heavy wooden door behind her, leaning against it for a moment, her eyes shut. The silence of the room was a stark contrast to the tumultuous symphony within her. She moved slowly, shedding her travel-worn clothes, each garment falling away like a layer of armor she hadn't realized she was wearing. The coolness of the silk slip against her skin was a sensual whisper. She walked to the open balcony doors, stepping out into the soft night. The sound of the waves, a rhythmic lullaby, filled the space. Lying in the large, comfortable bed, the crisp white sheets cool against her body, she found sleep elusive. Her mind replayed every glance, every word, every subtle shift in his expression. She imagined the strength of his hands, the warmth of his touch, the scent of his skin. An unfamiliar heat bloomed low in her belly, a delicious, unsettling awareness. She was a woman, fully, gloriously alive, and he had seen it, acknowledged it, ignited it. Sleep, when it finally came, was a restless tapestry woven with dreams of sun-drenched coves, the glint of sunlight on dark hair, and a pair of eyes that promised to unlock every secret. The first rays of dawn, filtered through the sheer curtains, painted the room in shades of pearly gray and soft gold. Elara woke slowly, a languid stretch rippling through her limbs. For a moment she was disoriented. Then the vivid memory of the previous evening flooded her, bringing with it a rush of warmth and a tingling anticipation. Her heart, which had felt so heavy and muted for so long, now beat with a vibrant, almost impatient rhythm. She rose, feeling a lightness she hadn't known she possessed. The world outside her window shimmered, the sea a brilliant sapphire under a sky of purest blue. The air was fresh, scented with wild herbs and the promise of a glorious day. As she showered, the warm water cascading over her skin, she felt a renewed sense of self, a quiet strength she hadn't realized was buried beneath layers of grief. She took extra care with her appearance, choosing a simple linen dress the color of seafoam that skimmed her curves, feeling a desire to present herself not just to the world, but to him, with a quiet confidence. Descending to the breakfast room, the villa felt different in the daylight. Light streamed through arched windows, illuminating the rich textures of antique wood, the vibrant colors of a mosaic floor. A pleasant aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm bread hung in the air. A kindly, silver-haired woman, presumably the cook, smiled warmly from the kitchen doorway. Elara paused, her gaze sweeping the room, a flutter in her stomach. Would he be here? The room was empty save for a beautifully laid table by a window overlooking the sea. A small sigh of disappointment escaped her, quickly followed by a sense of relief. Perhaps it was for the best. She needed a moment to gather her thoughts, to prepare for another encounter. She poured herself a cup of dark, fragrant coffee and selected a warm, flaky pastry. Taking a seat at the table, she watched the sea, allowing the gentle sounds to soothe her. Just as she lifted the cup to her lips, a deep voice, rich as dark honey, spoke from the doorway. "Good morning, Elara. I trust you slept well?" She turned, her breath catching. He stood there, framed by the light, looking impossibly handsome in a casual linen shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. His eyes, those captivating deep-sea eyes, held a familiar warmth, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. She realized he had remembered her name, though she hadn't explicitly told him. A small, intimate detail that sent a thrill through her. "Good morning," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "Yes, surprisingly well, thank you. And you?" He moved further into the room, his stride fluid and powerful, pulling out the chair opposite her. "The sea always sings me to sleep here. It's a rare gift." He settled into his seat, his gaze unwavering. "Reese, by the way, though I believe we skipped that formality last night in favor of more pressing matters." His tone was light, teasing, yet the underlying current was unmistakable. "Reese," she repeated, tasting the name on her tongue. It suited him. Strong, ancient, Elara. A beautiful name. It suits you. His eyes lingered on her, a silent conversation passing between them that transcended words. The air around them crackled with an unspoken energy. Did you have plans for the day?" he asked, picking up a piece of fruit from the basket. Elara shrugged lightly. "Nothing specific. I thought I might explore the villa grounds, perhaps walk down to the village." Reese nodded, his gaze still fixed on her. "The village is charming, but the true heart of the island lies off the beaten path. There's a hidden cove not far from here, with water so clear you can see to the bottom, and ancient olive trees that whisper tales of centuries past. Would you care to join me?" I could show you. Her heart quickened. This was it, the invitation she had both dreaded and yearned for. To spend more time with him, to delve deeper into the mystery he presented, was a dangerous temptation. Yet, the thought of turning him down felt like a betrayal of something vital, something that had just begun to unfurl within her. I would like that very much, she said, a genuine smile gracing her lips. The thrill of saying yes was exhilarating. Excellent, he replied, his smile widening, reaching his eyes. Finish your breakfast then. I'll meet you by the main gate in an hour. Wear comfortable shoes. With another lingering glance, he rose and moved towards the kitchen, presumably to get his own breakfast. Elara watched him go, a warmth spreading through her chest. The island, she realized, was just beginning to reveal its secrets, and Rhys, it seemed, was her guide. Exactly an hour later, Elara found Rhys waiting for her by the wrought iron gate, his presence a magnetic pull. He wore sturdy walking sandals and a light shirt, and carried a small canvas bag. The sun was high now, painting the landscape in vibrant hues. A gentle breeze rustled through the cypress trees, carrying the scent of wild thyme and sun-warmed earth. Ready to explore? He asked, his eyes sparkling with an infectious energy. As I'll ever be, she replied, a lightness in her step she hadn't felt in years. They set off, a winding path leading them away from the manicured gardens of the villa and into a landscape that felt wilder, more ancient. The air was alive with the buzz of insects and the distant cry of gulls. Rhys led the way, his movements graceful and sure, occasionally turning to offer a hand over a rocky patch or to point out a particular wildflower. This island, he began, his voice a low murmur. It has a soul. You feel it, don't you? It's not just rock and earth, it's a living, breathing entity. Elara nodded, her gaze sweeping over the rugged beauty. I do. It feels resonant, like it holds memories. Centuries of them, he confirmed, his eyes thoughtful. Of sailors and philosophers, of lovers and warriors. They say the very air is saturated with their stories. Their conversation flowed easily, a natural rhythm developing between them. They spoke of travel, of books, of the simple pleasures of life. Rhys, she discovered, was an artist, though he hadn't specified his medium. He spoke of light and shadow, of capturing fleeting moments, of the raw beauty of the natural world. He listened intently when she spoke, his gaze making her feel seen, truly heard, in a way that was both unnerving and deeply comforting. She found herself opening up, sharing fragments of her own life, of her work as an architectural historian, of her quiet yearning for a place that felt like home. You seek foundations then, he mused, as they paused by an ancient stone wall, crumbling but still defiant. To understand how things are built, how they endure, and how they fall, Elara added softly, a shadow crossing her face. And how to rebuild. His eyes met hers, a deep understanding passing between them. He didn't offer platitudes, just a quiet knowing look that spoke volumes. He seemed to grasp the unspoken weight she carried, the broken part of herself she hadn't expected to find stirred. They continued their walk, the path gradually descending towards the coast. The vegetation grew denser, the scent of pine needles mingling with the salty air. Elara's arm brushed against his as they navigated a narrow passage, and a jolt, sharp and electric, passed between them. She quickly pulled away, her cheeks warming. But she knew he had felt it too. The air around them thickened, charged with a new, unspoken awareness. Finally the path opened up, revealing a breathtaking sight. Below them, nestled between two rugged cliffs, lay a small, secluded cove. The water was an impossible turquoise, so clear that the pebbles on the seabed were visible. A crescent of soft, golden sand beckoned, framed by gnarled olive trees, whose silver-green leaves shimmered in the sun. It was a place of pristine, untouched beauty, a sanctuary. This is it, Rhys said, his voice softer now, reverent. The hidden heart. They descended a short, winding track to the sand. Elara kicked off her sandals, relishing the feel of the warm grains beneath her bare feet. The silence here was profound, broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves. Rhys spread a large linen cloth he had carried in his bag, inviting her to sit. They settled side by side, their shoulders almost touching, gazing out at the endless expanse of sea and sky. The sun, warm on her skin, felt like a blessing. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the pure, clean air, feeling the tension drain from her body. "It's magnificent, Rhys," she whispered, opening her eyes. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Some places are meant to be shared," he replied, his voice low. His gaze was no longer on the sea, but on her. The air thrummed with unspoken words, with desires that simmered just beneath the surface. His proximity was a potent force, drawing her in, making her intensely aware of her own body, of the subtle vibrations that now coursed through her veins. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the faint scent of salt and sun, and something uniquely him, earthy, masculine, intoxicating. He reached into his bag, pulling out 2 small bottles of water and a couple of ripe figs. He offered her one, his fingers brushing hers as she took it. The touch was fleeting, yet it sent a shiver through her. She bit into the fig, its sweetness exploding on her tongue, a sensual delight. They ate in comfortable silence, the only sound the gentle rhythm of the waves. When they finished, Rhys leaned back on his elbows, turning slightly towards her. His eyes, in the intense daylight, were even more captivating, revealing flecks of amber amidst the deep blue. "You came here seeking peace," he stated, not as a question, but as a knowing affirmation. Ilara met his gaze, feeling a vulnerability she hadn't anticipated. "Yes, and something else perhaps. A way to reconnect with myself." "And have you found it?" he asked, his voice soft, intimate. "I think—" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands, which were idly tracing patterns in the sand. "I think I've found a path towards it, or perhaps a guide." She looked up, her eyes seeking his. The unspoken question hung in the air. "Guy that guide?" "Oh." A slow, tender smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and made her heart ache with a longing she couldn't name. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he slowly, deliberately reached out. His hand, warm and strong, covered hers where it rested on the sand. The touch was electric, a jolt of pure sensation that coursed through her arm, setting every nerve ending alight. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand slightly, allowing her fingers to entwine with his. His thumb began to trace a slow, mesmerizing pattern on the back of her hand, a feather-light caress that spoke volumes. The world narrowed, shrinking to just the two of them, the rhythmic sound of the sea a distant hum. Her breath hitched, a delicious tremor running through her. She felt a lightness, an exquisite vulnerability, as if every secret she held was laid bare under his gentle touch. His gaze was intense, unwavering, reading her very soul. He leaned closer, his scent enveloping her, a potent mix of sun, sea, and man. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. Her eyes fluttered close for a moment, anticipating, yearning. She could feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek, the subtle pull of his presence. His thumb continued its hypnotic dance on her skin, a silent promise of deeper intimacy. Her lips parted slightly, a silent invitation. He was so close now, she could feel the heat radiating from his body, the subtle tension in his muscles. The desire to lean in, to close the small distance between them, was overwhelming. She longed to feel his lips on hers, to explore the depths of this profound connection that had sparked so suddenly, so fiercely. Just as the space between them seemed to vanish, a sudden, piercing cry of a seabird echoed above them, sharp and insistent, shattering the spell. Ilara gasped softly, her eyes flying open. Rhys pulled back infinitesimally, his hand still holding hers, but the moment had passed. The raw, unspoken longing remained, a palpable force between them. He squeezed her hand gently, a silent acknowledgement of the intensity they had just shared. "The sun is starting to dip," he said, his voice a little rougher than before. We should head back before the path becomes too dim. A wave of disappointment, sharp and unexpected, washed over her, quickly followed by a strange sense of relief. The anticipation, she realized, was almost as intoxicating as the fulfillment. He hadn't rushed it, hadn't pressed. He understood the delicate dance between desire and respect. They rose, the lingering touch of their hands reluctant to part. The walk back was quieter, filled with the hum of unspoken desires and the lingering heat of their shared moment. The island, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, seemed to hold its breath, watching them. Back at the villa, the air was cooler, the shadows longer. They parted at the entrance to their respective rooms, a lingering look passing between them, a silent promise of what was yet to come. "Dinner is at 8, he said, his voice a low murmur, his eyes holding hers. "Perhaps we can share a bottle of local wine?" "I'd like that," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Alone in her room, Elara felt a heightened awareness of her own body, a delicious ache of longing that settled deep within her. The cool water of her shower did little to extinguish the fire he had ignited. She chose a dress of flowing silk, the color of amethyst, feeling a sensual readiness she hadn't felt in years. Every brush of the fabric against her skin was a reminder of his touch, a silent anticipation of his presence. She stood on her balcony, watching the last sliver of sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. The stars began to pepper the darkening canvas, each one a tiny, shimmering promise. She knew, with a certainty that hummed in her veins, that the whispers of Villa Delphinus were growing louder. They were speaking her name, his name, weaving a story she was only just beginning to dream. A story that was unfolding, moment by exquisite moment, under the vast watchful sky of the Aegean. And tonight, over wine and shared gazes, another chapter would surely begin. The air, still warm from the day's sun, was now laced with the cool breath of the sea, carrying the scent of salt and wild thyme. Marina watched him from the balcony, a silhouette against the last blush of the sky, as he moved through the garden, plucking a jasmine bloom and tucking it behind his ear with a playful grin that made her heart flutter. He turned, catching her gaze, and the distance between them evaporated in the warmth of his smile. "Dinner in 30?" he called, his voice a rich murmur that carried easily on the breeze. "Perfect," she replied, a smile blooming on her own face, feeling a lightness she hadn't known she was missing. She retreated inside, the cool marble a pleasant counterpoint to her heated skin. The villa's interior, dimly lit by strategically placed lanterns, exuded an understated luxury. She chose a dress that night, a simple silk slip the color of amethyst, that flowed around her body like liquid moonlight, clinging in all the right places, whispering against her skin with every movement. A subtle shimmer of gold on her eyelids, a touch of gloss on her lips, and she was ready. Her reflection in the antique mirror showed a woman transformed, not just by the dress, but by the quiet joy radiating from within. The Aegean had always held a special magic for her, but with him, it was a symphony. When she descended the grand staircase, he was waiting at the bottom, a glass of chilled white wine in his hand. He looked impossibly handsome in a linen shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, his dark hair still damp from a shower. The jasmine bloom was gone from behind his ear, but a faint, sweet scent seemed to cling to him. His eyes, the color of warm honey, met hers, and a flicker of admiration, potent and undisguised, passed between them. "You look breathtaking, Marina," he said, his voice dropping to a low, appreciative tone that sent a shiver down her spine. He extended the glass. "For you." Her fingers brushed his as she took it, a spark passing between them that was both electric and comforting. "And you, Theo," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. "You clean up rather well yourself." He chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "Shall we?" He gestured towards the terrace, where a small, elegant table had been set. The dining experience was a dream woven from starlight and sea air. The table, draped in pristine white linen, was adorned with a simple arrangement of white roses and flickering candles that cast dancing shadows. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of waves against the shore below, and the soft clinking of cutlery. Theo poured them more wine, a local Acertico, crisp and bright Doyle. They spoke of many things, of their day, of the island's beauty, of shared memories from years ago that resurfaced with surprising clarity. But beneath the surface of their conversation, an unspoken current flowed, a growing awareness, a magnetic pull. His gaze lingered on her, warm and intense, tracing the curve of her neck, the line of her collarbone, the rise and fall of her chest. When she met his eyes, a silent question hung in the air. A promise. The food was a celebration of local flavors. Fresh grilled octopus, drizzled with lemon and olive oil, a vibrant Greek salad, and delicate feta pastries. Each dish was simple yet exquisite, perfectly complementing the wine and the atmosphere. Marina found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, the tension that often clung to her shoulders melting away under Theo's easy charm and genuine warmth. At one point, as he reached across the table to refill her glass, his fingers brushed hers again, and this time, he didn't immediately pull away. His thumb gently stroked the back of her hand, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt of pure sensation through her arm, straight to her core. Her breath hitched, and she looked up, her eyes locking with his. In their depths, she saw a mirroring of her own burgeoning desire, a quiet intensity that stole her words. He held her gaze for a long moment, a silent conversation passing between them that was more profound than any spoken words. Then, with a soft sigh, he retracted his hand, but the imprint of his touch remained, a phantom warmth on her skin. Dessert arrived, a plate of fresh figs with honey and mascarpone. But it was the sweetness of the moment, the intoxicating blend of anticipation and connection, that truly satiated her. As they finished their meal, Theo leaned back, a contented smile on his face. "This," he said, sweeping a hand to encompass the starlit sky, the shimmering sea, the villa, and most importantly, her, is exactly what I envisioned. More, even. "Me too," Marina whispered, her voice husky. The stars above seemed to lean in, listening to their silent declarations. He pushed his chair back and stood, extending a hand to her. "Shall we take a walk, my love? The night is too beautiful to waste indoors." The endearment, my love, spoken so casually, yet with such profound sincerity, resonated deep within her. It felt right, natural, as if it had always been meant to be spoken between them. She placed her hand in his, her fingers intertwining with his strong ones. His touch was firm, reassuring and utterly captivating. They strolled along the cobbled path that wound through the villa's expansive grounds, the scent of night-blooming jasmine and honeysuckle heavy in the air. The path led them to a secluded part of the garden, a small alcove carved into the cliff face, where a stone bench overlooked the moon-silvered Aegean. The waves below whispered secrets against the rocks, a rhythmic lullaby under the vast dome of the night sky. They sat close on the bench, his arm settling naturally around her waist, pulling her gently against his side. Her head rested against his shoulder, and she felt the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her ear. It was a sensation of profound peace and exhilarating excitement, all at once. "Tell me, Marina," he murmured, his breath warm against her hair. "What are you thinking right now?" She paused, gathering her thoughts, allowing herself to be utterly honest. "I'm thinking that this feels like coming home, like I've been searching for something, and I've found it here with you." She felt him shift, his fingers tracing a soft pattern on her arm, sending shivers through her. He turned his head, and she felt his gaze on her, heavy and tender. "I feel it too," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "I've missed you, Marina, more than I ever realized." Slowly, gently, he turned her to face him, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumbs stroking her skin. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment, savoring the exquisite sensation. The world seemed to shrink, narrowing to just the two of them, the soft murmur of the waves, and the electric current that now pulsed between their bodies. His face was close, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath on her lips, smell the subtle scent of him. Sea, sun, and something uniquely Theo. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She lifted her hand, her fingers finding the soft skin of his jaw, her thumb tracing the strong line of his cheekbone. "Theo," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't speak, just lowered his head, his eyes dark and deep, holding hers in a silent plea, a profound question. And then, his lips were on hers. It was a kiss that started softly, tentatively, a question and an answer, a gentle exploration. His lips were warm and firm, tasting faintly of wine and something undeniably masculine. She responded instantly, parting her own lips, inviting him deeper. He accepted the invitation with a soft groan, his hand moving from her cheek to the nape of her neck, tangling in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the angle. The kiss intensified, becoming more urgent, more demanding. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of years of unspoken desires, of a connection that transcended time. Her hands moved from his jaw to his shoulders, then around his neck, pulling him closer still, pressing her body against his. She felt the hard planes of his chest, the warmth of his skin through his shirt, and a delicious ache spread through her core. His tongue gently explored the soft cavern of her mouth, a sensual dance that left her breathless, lightheaded. She tasted him, savored him, lost herself in the exquisite sensation. Every nerve ending in her body hummed to life, a symphony of touch and taste and scent. The world outside them faded, leaving only the exquisite intimacy of their embrace. When they finally broke apart, it was only for air, their foreheads resting against each other, their breaths ragged. Her lips tingled, swollen and sensitive, and a flush had risen to her cheeks. She looked into his eyes, and saw a raw, unbridled passion there, mirroring her own. "Marina," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his thumb still stroking her cheek. "You have no idea how long I've dreamt of this." "I think I do," she replied, her voice soft, her fingers still tangled in his hair. "Because I've dreamt of it too." He kissed her again, this time, with a hungry urgency that left no doubt about his desire. His hand slid from her neck down her spine, tracing the curve of her back, pressing her even closer until their bodies were molded together, silk against linen, skin against skin. She felt the hard evidence of his arousal against her thigh, and a thrill, both exhilarating and slightly terrifying, shot through her. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look at her, his eyes searching hers. "Come inside with me," he whispered, his voice a low growl that sent shivers through her. "Let's continue this dream." She didn't hesitate. A silent nod was all the answer he needed. He stood, pulling her up with him, their hands remaining intertwined. He didn't release her hand as they walked back towards the villa, but kept her close, their shoulders brushing with every step. The path, once a mere walkway, now felt like a journey, each step leading them deeper into a shared destiny. Inside, the grand entrance hall was softly lit. He led her not to the staircase, but to a different door, one she hadn't noticed before, tucked away in a quiet corner. He opened it to reveal a private lounge, a haven of plush comfort. A large low sofa piled with cushions dominated the room, bathed in the warm glow of a fireplace, though no fire burned, only flickering candles adding to the ambience. A record player sat on a side table, a soulful jazz melody already spinning softly, filling the space with its smooth, seductive notes. "I thought this might be more fitting," he murmured, guiding her to the sofa. She sank into the soft cushions, her silk dress rustling around her. He sat beside her, closer than before, their knees almost touching. He didn't speak, just watched her, his eyes warm and full of unspoken promises. The jazz music, a saxophone weeping a slow, passionate tune, wrapped around them like a velvet cloak. He reached out, his hand gently taking hers, his fingers tracing the delicate bones of her wrist. "You're beautiful, Marina," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside and out. Her gaze dropped to their joined hands, then back to his face. The vulnerability in his eyes, the sheer tenderness, disarmed her. She felt an overwhelming rush of affection, a deep sense of connection that went beyond mere physical attraction. "You're not so bad yourself, Theo," she teased gently, a soft smile gracing her lips. But her eyes were serious, conveying the depth of her feelings. He smiled, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that made her heart skip a beat. Then, his gaze dropped to her mouth, lingering there, and the air crackled with renewed tension. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but she had no desire to. She met him halfway, her lips parting in anticipation. This kiss was different again. Slower, deeper, more possessive. His hand released hers, moving to cup her jaw, then tracing the line of her neck, his thumb brushing the pulse point that now throbbed frantically beneath her skin. He tasted her, explored her, his tongue dancing with hers in a rhythm that was both ancient and utterly new. She felt herself melting into him, her body growing heavy, languid with desire. Her hands found purchase on his shoulders, then slid up to entwine in the soft hair at the nape of his neck. She pulled him closer still, desperate for more contact, more of him. The silk of her dress, already clinging to her, now felt like a second skin, exquisitely sensitive to every shift, every brush of his body against hers. He groaned softly, a sound that vibrated through her, igniting a deeper fire. His lips left hers, trailing a burning path down her jawline, to her neck, where he lingered, tasting, nipping gently, sending shivers cascading down her spine. "You smell incredible," he whispered, his voice hoarse, his breath warm against her skin. "Like moonlight and jasmine." Her head fell back, exposing the delicate curve of her throat, offering herself to his ministrations. She closed her eyes, reveling in the intoxicating sensations, the heady scent of him, the exquisite pressure of his lips and teeth. Her fingers tightened in his hair, a silent plea for him to continue, to never stop. His hand, which had been caressing her neck, now slid lower, over her shoulder, down her arm before coming to rest lightly on her hip. The heat of his palm seeped through the thin silk of her dress, a promise of the skin beneath. He moved slowly, deliberately, giving her time to adjust, to respond. She arched into his touch, a soft moan escaping her lips. The sound seemed to embolden him. His fingers began to stroke the curve of her hip, a light, teasing motion that sent delicious tremors through her. He shifted on the sofa, turning more fully towards her, his leg now pressed intimately against hers. The sensation of silk against linen, then the warmth of their bodies, was electrifying. He lifted his head, his eyes dark with passion, but still holding that tender, questioning light. "Marina," he breathed, his voice a low, sensual rumble. "Are you sure?" She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just desire, but respect, adoration, and a deep, abiding connection. This wasn't just physical, it was soul deep. "Yes, Theo," she whispered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "More than sure." A relieved smile touched his lips, and he leaned in again, his kiss this time a declaration, a surrender, a promise. His hand moved from her hip, slowly, sensuously, up her side past her ribcage, until it reached the swell of her breast. He paused, his thumb brushing the sensitive fabric, and she gasped, a sharp intake of breath, as an exquisite sensation bloomed within her. He watched her reaction, his eyes heavy-lidded, full of hunger. Then with a gentle touch, he cupped her breast, his fingers molding to its curve through the silk. The fabric was thin, offering little barrier, and she felt the direct heat of his palm, the slight pressure, the exquisite friction. Her nipple hardened instantly, aching for more. Her own hands, almost of their own volition, moved to the front of his linen shirt, fumbling with the buttons. He broke the kiss, a soft laugh rumbling in his chest, and helped her, his fingers deft as they unfastened the small buttons. When the shirt was open, she pushed it back from his shoulders, revealing the smooth, warm skin of his chest, dusted with dark hair. She leaned in, pressing her lips to his chest, tasting the salt and musk of him. Her tongue flickered, tracing the line of his collarbone, then venturing lower, over the firm muscle, to the sensitive skin around his nipple. He gasped a sharp, ragged sound and arched his back, pressing himself more fully against her. His hand continued to caress her breast, his thumb now teasing her hard peak, sending waves of pleasure through her. The jazz music played on, a soft, seductive backdrop to their escalating passion. The world outside the villa, the Aegean night, the stars, all seemed to recede, leaving only the heightened reality of their touch, their breath, their unspoken desires. He pulled back, just enough to look at her, his eyes burning with desire. His fingers found the delicate straps of her silk dress, and with a slow, deliberate movement, he slid them down her shoulders. The silk pooled around her waist, leaving her upper body bare to his gaze, to the soft candlelight, to the cool air that now kissed her skin. She shivered, not from cold, but from pure, unadulterated sensation. His eyes devoured her, lingering on the soft swell of her breasts, the delicate curve of her collarbone, the trembling skin of her shoulders. "You are truly exquisite," he whispered, his voice thick with reverence. He reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her breast, circling her nipple, which stood proudly erect, aching for his touch. Her breath caught in her throat, a soft moan escaping her lips. He leaned in, taking her breast into his mouth, his lips soft and warm, his tongue a velvet caress. A jolt of pure pleasure shot through her, from her breast to her core, igniting a fire that threatened to consume her. She gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair, holding him closer, pressing him against her. He suckled gently, then more firmly, drawing on her, creating a delicious pull that echoed deep within her. She closed her eyes, lost in the overwhelming sensations, the exquisite tenderness and fierce hunger of his mouth on her skin. Her body arched into his, her hips instinctively pushing against his, seeking a deeper connection. The thin silk of her dress was now tangled around her waist, and she felt the warmth of his hand on her bare skin, stroking her back, tracing the curve of her spine. He moved from one breast to the other, lavishing attention on each, driving her to the brink of delirium. Her mind emptied of everything but the feel of him, the taste of him, the raw, primal pleasure he was eliciting. She was a creature of pure sensation, her body alive and humming with an intensity she had never known. When he finally lifted his head, her breasts were flushed, her nipples swollen and sensitive. Her entire body throbbed with a delicious ache, a yearning for more. He looked at her, his eyes dark and smoldering, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. "You're beautiful, Marina," he repeated, his voice husky, his eyes never leaving hers. "And you're mine." The possessiveness in his tone was not frightening, but exhilarating, a confirmation of the bond that was rapidly forming between them. He reached for the hem of her dress, his fingers brushing against her inner thigh, as he slowly, tantalizingly, began to pull it up. The silk slid over her skin, a whisper of fabric, until it was bunched around her hips. His gaze followed the movement, his eyes burning with an unspoken promise. She watched him, her breath held captive in her chest, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. The night, the villa, the very air itself, seemed to vibrate with anticipation. The story was indeed unfolding, moment by exquisite moment, under the vast watchful sky of the Aegean, and this chapter, she knew, was only just beginning to reach its most passionate crescendo. His gaze, a silent question and a fervent promise, held hers captive. The air thrummed, not just with the cicada's song, but with the rapid beat of her own heart. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another, until the warmth of his body radiated against hers, a subtle heat that ignited a deeper fire within her. Her hands, almost of their own accord, reached up to cup his face, her thumbs tracing the strong line of his jaw. The stubble was soft beneath her touch, a delectable rasp that sent a shiver down her spine. "Eleni," he murmured, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that seemed to pluck at the very strings of her soul. He leaned in, his breath a warm caress against her ear, smelling of wine and the clean, salty air. "You are exquisite." His lips found the sensitive curve of her neck, a feather-light touch that blossomed into a soft, exploring kiss. She arched into him, a soft sigh escaping her lips as his hands, strong and sure, found the small of her back, pressing her closer until there was no space left between them. The bunched fabric of her skirt, now a soft barrier, slipped lower as his fingers dipped beneath it, finding the warm, yielding skin of her lower back. A gasp caught in her throat, a delicious shock that spread through her veins. The kiss deepened, his mouth finding hers with an urgency that mirrored her own. It was a kiss of longing, of discovery, of a thirst that had been building for an eternity. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him closer still, lost in the intoxicating taste of him. The stars above seemed to spin, the villa receded, until there was only the two of them, suspended in a universe of pure sensation. His tongue danced with hers, a playful, passionate tango that left her breathless and yearning for more. He broke the kiss only to pepper her face with tiny, lingering pecks, her eyelids, her temple, the corner of her trembling mouth, before returning to her lips with renewed intensity. With one smooth movement, he lifted her into his arms, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist. She laughed, a soft, surprised sound that was quickly swallowed by his mouth. He carried her through the open archway, the soft glow of the villa's interior lamps painting their skin in hues of gold and shadow. The bedroom was a sanctuary of white linen and cool, polished stone. He set her down gently beside the bed, his eyes never leaving hers. Her skirt, forgotten in the heat of their embrace, slid to the floor, a pool of silk around her ankles. She stepped out of it, her gaze fixed on him, a silent invitation in her eyes. He reached for the buttons of his shirt, his movements slow and deliberate, each unfastened button revealing more of his sculpted chest, the taut muscles flexing beneath his sun-kissed skin. She watched, mesmerized, as he shrugged it off, letting it fall to the floor with a soft rustle. He reached for her, his fingers tracing the delicate lace of her camisole. "Let me," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. With exquisite care, he unfastened the tiny pearl buttons, his knuckles brushing against her skin, sending shivers through her. The camisole, like the skirt before it, drifted to the floor, leaving her in only her sheer lace briefs. His eyes, dark and intense, devoured every inch of her. He knelt before her, his hands resting gently on her hips. Her heart hammered against her ribs as he slowly, sensuously, drew down the lace, his touch sending waves of heat through her. The last whisper of fabric joined the others on the cool marble floor. She stood before him, bare and vulnerable, yet utterly desired. He rose, his hands sliding up her body, framing her face. "You are more beautiful than any sunrise, Eleni," he breathed, before lowering her gently onto the bed. The cool linen was a welcome contrast to the fire igniting between them. He followed her down, his weight a comforting presence as he settled beside her, propping himself up on one elbow, his gaze still fixed on her. His fingers began to explore, tracing the curve of her hip, the line of her thigh, the soft skin of her inner arm. Each touch was a promise, a question, an affirmation. She reciprocated, her hands venturing over the planes of his chest, across the taut expanse of his stomach, feeling the exquisite tension that radiated from him. Their breaths mingled, ragged and shallow, as the space between them seemed to shrink, absorbed by the growing intensity of their desire. The world outside faded into a distant hum. There was only the scent of their skin, the soft brush of hair against skin, the escalating rhythm of their breathing. He leaned down, his lips brushing hers, teasing, tantalizing, until she moaned softly, pulling him closer. Their bodies aligned, a perfect fit, as if designed for this very moment. He moved with a tender urgency, his body finding hers with a sigh of profound contentment. A shared gasp escaped their lips as the last barrier dissolved, and they became one. It was a joining of souls, a dance of ancient rhythms under the watchful Aegean sky. The sensations were overwhelming, a symphony of touch and feeling that built and swelled, carrying them higher and higher. Each movement was a shared breath, a whispered prayer, a testament to the undeniable connection that bound them. The passion erupted, a crescendo of pure, unadulterated pleasure that echoed through the room. Stars exploded behind her eyelids, and her body arched, consumed by the exquisite release. His name tore from her throat, a primal sound of surrender and ecstasy. He held her close, his own body trembling, his face buried in the curve of her neck, his ragged breaths warming her skin. Slowly, gently, the tempest subsided, leaving behind a profound stillness, a tranquil afterglow. They lay tangled together, limbs intertwined, heartbeats gradually slowing to a contented rhythm. His arm tightened around her, pulling her even closer until her head rested on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath her ear. The silence was filled with a quiet understanding, a deep, unspoken gratitude. He pressed a soft kiss to her hair. "Eleni," he whispered, the single word, a tender caress. She stirred, nestling deeper into his embrace. The moon, now high above, cast a silvery glow through the open balcony doors, illuminating the room in soft shadows. She felt utterly safe, utterly cherished, utterly at peace. This was more than just passion. It was a profound intimacy, a connection that had been waiting to be discovered under the vast starlit canvas of the Aegean. This chapter might have reached its passionate crescendo, but as she drifted into a blissful sleep in his arms, she knew with a certainty that warmed her to her core that their story had only just truly begun.